Today on the podcast, I'm going to be talking about schools in London, Ontario, and why they matter even if you don't have kids. Welcome back to the London, Ontario Real Estate Podcast. My name is Phil Bailey, and I'm a real estate agent right here in London, Ontario. Haven't done the podcast for a little while, but I would like to do it more. I know I keep saying that, but I've had some folks bring it up with me and say, hey, I'd like to hear more podcasts. So I'm going to try to commit to do more of these as things kind of start moving over into the summer months. I think the year has been a little crazy in London so far. I've had a very busy year, but definitely it's a tough market right now for sellers in London. Obviously, it depends on what area you're in. But on the podcast today, I wanted to talk about something that keeps getting brought up with me, and that is school districts and how they impact real estate in the London, Ontario area. I have some news for you. Even if you don't have kids, they will impact the value of your house. They'll impact the neighborhood feel of your home. They'll impact who lives in the area, what kind of amenities you have in the area, everything. I have a young kid, so obviously I'm a little obsessive about this because my kid hasn't actually started school yet, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and I wanted to share some things that I've learned as a real estate agent, but also as a dad in London, Ontario. So why do they matter for real estate? They can, depending on the school district, attract more buyers. You can typically sell your home faster if it's in one of the more highly ranked schools. And we'll talk about how we're ranking schools, which I don't think is always the best. And also, you can sometimes just get a quicker sale. So, let's think about an area like Brokerage, Old North, Old South, Masonville, get into the North End. There's Stony Creek. Jack Chambers is a big one that everyone always talks to me about. So there's some schools in those areas that I think the prices of those homes are higher, sometimes significantly, because of those school districts. So sometimes when I'm listing a home in those areas, I'll definitely make sure that I highlight that in the marketing material, make sure people are aware of that. And sometimes these homes are moving very, very quickly based on the home, but also I think even more based on the area. As they say in real estate, location, location, location. I think school district does matter. So what are you thinking about when you're picking a school district? Well, let's talk about the rankings, which I think are very controversial at times. I did a blog post that I can link to in the show notes here about elementary schools in London. I had a video that went up on it, and I had tens of thousands, I think over 100,000 views on this video. So people are definitely interested in this topic. The top schools, and I'll just go through them based on what we were seeing with the Fraser Institute, and I'll talk about how they're coming up with these test scores. Number one is John Dearness. So that's in Hazelton, kind of between Byron, Oakridge. I guess they call it Oakridge. Jack Chambers is number two. That's in Uplands, North London. Sir Arthur Currie Public School in Foxfield, so northwest London. Then you have Old North Public School in Old North, believe it or not. And then West Oaks French Immersion, which is in Oakridge. And then you get into Masonville for the top six. Then Lambeth Public School, Orchard Park, University Heights. And then there's a few that are very, very close to that area, like St. George's, which is in Old North. So those are the public elementary schools. I will talk about Catholic elementary schools. So let's just do the top five there. You had St. George in Byron, St. John, which is in Hyde Park, Frère André, my French is terrible, I know, in South Crest, St. Teresa in Byron, and St. Rose of Lima in Westmount. So what are these scores based on? Well, they're based on the Fraser Institute rankings, and how the Fraser Institute is coming up with those rankings, as I understand, and I have read through this quite extensively as a parent and a real estate agent for people, is they're just looking at test scores. So I think it's in grade 3 and grade 6 for the elementary schools. You're taking a test as a elementary student. I remember doing it. Even I think they introduced it around when I was in school. I'll age myself a little bit, but what happens in those tests is they test things like math skills and English skills, literacy skills, all of that stuff. And then they're putting those test scores up in kind of compiling them and just giving the rankings. It's pretty darn simple. And a lot of what I heard in my video when I posted it, and again, I didn't come up with the rankings, folks. I know some people think I did, but I did not. What I heard is you're not even thinking about the culture of the school, what's best for your kid, who's the new principal that just came in, what are the teachers like? Teachers come in, they retire. Also, the data is actually a little bit behind because they're looking at test scores that came out I think it's like a year or two ago in some cases. So I think you have to be really, really careful as a parent. And I think you have to go a little bit further into this if you're looking to actually move your family into a school area. What I did is I looked at the rankings. I asked parents, I asked teachers that I know, principals that I know, I asked former teachers that I know that are clients of mine. I did my research on all of the online forums I can think of. And I even was even to the point of like going by the school, not during school hours, but just to get an idea of, okay, what's the feel? Is there a playground? What is my kid like? I mean, she's young, so I think she's still figuring that out, just probably like most people are. But I think we need to consider those rankings as kind of a first glance, maybe at a school. I think if a school is constantly highly ranked for year over year over year, yeah, there's probably something to be said about that. But I also understand as a parent is that a lot of this is based on socioeconomic factors of the neighborhood, which means that in certain areas, you're going to have parents that likely make higher incomes and that likely have, to be honest, more time to commit to their kid going through this, or they're just university educated or whatever, and they can do well on standardized testing, right? But I mean, some kids are going to go into very different things. They're not all going to go to university. I hope not, because we need tradespeople. We need lots of people to do lots of things in the area. And a lot of people make a heck of a lot more money than I know a lot of people with a BA make, like myself. So I think you have to be very careful with these rankings, but you also can use them as a way to start the conversation. So what I'm noticing as a real estate agent is that when people are moving in from out of town, they're asking me about school districts, what's good, what's bad. Obviously, I can't tell you exactly what's good or bad, but I can point you to some rankings. I can also obviously share an opinion, but I have to be very careful with that as a real estate agent because what one person likes, another person may not. So I think as someone moving to London from out of town, yeah, those rankings are probably going to play a bigger role than someone who might be in a certain area already and understands it and loves the teachers, and maybe their other kid went there, and of course their other kid will go there as well. So I think you have to be very careful with this. But I think when you get into elementary schools in particular, the catchment areas are really important when you're looking at homes. So we're going to look at some of these areas, and a lot of the controversy on the video that I made that got a lot of views was that some people thought this is just all in North London. And a lot of them are in North London if you look at the top 5. Byron comes in a really big way as well. Oakridge comes in a really big way as well. I guess it depends on how you divide London. But I think in many ways, you have to start somewhere. And I think that's somewhere that some people do start. And obviously, I'll point people in that direction. But if you're moving in from out of town, then of course you're probably I hear Jack Chambers all the time, for example, right? I hear John Dearness all the time from people that are moving in from, I've had clients move in from different countries this year that are Canadian coming back, some different provinces from the GTA, right? Everyone's kind of moving into town. And if they have kids, that's probably going to be one of their number one priorities. I know it is for me, and it's something that I think about all the time. And I'm very nervous for the whole school experience when that begins for me and my family. So again, I would look at those rankings and then I would definitely ask. And I think that's why it's important to have a local expert who understands where the homes are selling for. Sometimes in those areas, you might not have the budget for a home in that area. Other times, maybe you can get into this area for a certain other budget, right? So I have clients across the board. Even this year, I've had clients in the 300,000 range all the way up to, getting close to like 2 million range. And the difference in London is that the school can make a factor in that, but it doesn't mean it's not the be all and end all of everything, right? So one other thing I want to mention, and I've said this to people, I have friends that have no interest in ever having kids. They are living a very different lifestyle than I am in many ways, and I think that's awesome for them, right? It's different than what I want. So as a real estate agent, I have to be sure to give advice based on what their needs are, right? And I have a process that I go through to ensure that I'm looking at their needs and wants. And really, my personal opinion is kind of meaningless to this experience. That said, I have told a lot of usually professional couples that decided I'm not having kids, right? Obviously, there's people that would love to have kids that can't for one reason or the other. And I'm very sensitive to that. But I think what we have to be careful of is if you have just no interest in having a kid, you want to be really careful that you just completely ignore school districts and say it doesn't matter to you at all, right? It can be something that will impact the value of your real estate. It can also impact the neighborhood, right? So if you look at, for example, Stony Creek area, you're going to have like the YMCA's up there. You have lots of nature close by, walking paths, parks. Everything is kind of built around this family feel. But if you go to, for example, like Old South, which has some great school information there, great rankings, in Old South, you have a very different community feel. And one family, even with kids, might want to live in Old South, and other people want to live in, further away from the restaurants and the action and everything. So I think as a real estate agent, you have to be very careful of that. And that's something I always try to do for my clients. That's really all I want to talk about today on the podcast is London, Ontario schools and why they matter when you're looking at real estate. I have a list of those schools. It's all on my website, philbailey.ca. You can look at my blog and take a look at all of the information that I've compiled of this, but also you can look at the Fraser Institute as well and get an idea of those rankings if you need a starting point. Of course, I would say ask around as well. I also have a list of homes in those particular areas that I can always share with people if you're interested. And if you have a real estate agent, I'm sure that a lot of them can do that work as well. So again, my name's Phil Bailey. I'm a real estate agent with HouseSigma in London. You can just text me directly at 226-977, or you can go to my website, philbailey.ca. I'm always happy to hear what you thought about the episode, ideas for future episodes, and let's just continue keeping this thing going and making sure that I'm sharing the information that you folks want to hear about. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful day in London, Ontario, and talk to you soon. Take care.